So I don't think that people should be defined forever by their worst actions, statements, and opinions, provided that they now sincerely regret them, apologize for them, and have made it clear that they're doing all of that for the right reason. For example, I do not forgive Hila Klein for her participation in the IDF and her kidnapping of a random Palestinian man in the West Bank, because she clearly doesn't actually regret it. She clearly doesn't actually think that what she did was wrong. She doesn't think that it's wrong to serve in the IDF. In fact, she has openly expressed that she thinks IDF soldiers are heroes. You know, you can't really use, well, I was conscripted as an absolving excuse when you actively pursued a more direct role in that genocidal terrorist military, and it's clear that your only issue with your service is that you were conscripted into it and you maybe would have preferred to do something else, rather than you actually think that the IDF does anything wrong. And you know, she now justifies Israeli genocide and parrots Zionist propaganda every 2 seconds, so she's clearly totally unrepentant about what she did. And I don't actually know, to be precise, what the person who I'm addressing in this video actually thinks right now. I've heard people say he has changed dramatically recently, and that may be true, but I could not find any actual evidence of that. All that I could find was him talking about other topics, many of which I do agree with him on, but then he has a bunch of unaddressed stuff from quite recently, around 6 to 8 months ago, that is just really, really heinous and disgusting, and that as far as I've been able to gather, he does not regret at all. And he has also talked about things that he did in his past, I would guess 15, 10, maybe even 20 years ago, where he talks about doing genuinely terrible things in like this gleeful way, almost like he's bragging about it. This person is Westside Tyler, who I only learned about because he was invited to Noah Samson's stream. Please don't go after Noah for this. Noah does not know anything about what this guy has said. So Westside Tyler is a relatively small streamer. He apparently agrees with me on a lot of things, but I do not think that by default means that I can't shit on him when he really deserves it. So first sort of red flag here is the very first thing, his description is former infantry marine. I've talked before about former soldiers for imperial militaries, and I've said, like, you know, it's fine provided that you really acknowledge that what you did was wrong, you shouldn't have done it, you advise other people against doing it, and you don't use it for clout. That's a big thing, that last one, because a lot of people, they're like, what I did in the military was horrible. I really wish I didn't do it. It was fucked up. It's wrong. You know, I'm going to put whatever effort I can now into discouraging other people from doing that same thing and educating people on why US imperialism is bad and why it's wrong to be a foot soldier for it. But the problem is that a lot of them still have this thing where they have to keep telling everyone that they're ex-military. Like, they just can't give up their clout for it. And I find that very perverse and disgusting. You know, if you truly believe that you had done something really bad, I don't think you would bring it up at every opportunity. So I don't see how it's possible for those people who bring it up at every opportunity to really believe that it's that bad. You know, if you were a rapist or a murderer, would you be like, hey everyone, I'm a murderer, I'm an ex-murderer? Because that's what you should conceive of this as being. That's what you are. You invade another people's country and you massacre the people who were defending it from your invasion. All in the name of what? US oil companies, George Bush's geopolitics, and now you're bragging about it in your bio? You're no better than any common murderer, and it's just as weird for you to introduce yourself like this as it would be for them to introduce themselves as a murderer. Of course, you can bring it up in a situation where it's relevant, like, you know, a former murderer being like, well, I was once in prison for murder, in a discussion about, say, prison reform or something. That's a relevant situation. A former infantry marine bringing up the fact that he went to Iraq as a former infantry marine in a discussion about the Iraq war, that's a relevant situation. But just introducing yourself by that's an attempt to get clout from that. So in the beginning, we have a problem here, a clear issue. But this is not my issue here, okay? If that was all that there was for me to be complaining about here, I wouldn't be making this video, because it's like, it's shit, but it's not worth making a whole video about. What is worth making a whole video about is other stuff that this guy has done and said. Here is a clip that another streamer made from her reaction to Westside Tyler's video, in which he talks about what he did in Iraq, and he just sort of openly brags about, let's face it, murdering people who were resisting the imperialist invasion that he was participating in. He talks about this proudly and openly, like almost, I mean, definitely like he thinks it's a positive thing.
Did you drone in all your bombs, Tyler? No, I was a machine gunner. I shot machine guns at people. And actually, the one time I fucking dropped a bomb on a guy, I held a laser on him. Literally, I looked at the guy, and I held a laser on him until he fucking died from a bomb coming out of a plane. You didn't think I could answer that question, did you? Killed a guy like that.
This guy, by any reasonable standard, whether it is actually the law in the USA, obviously, is a criminal. He's admitting to a crime there. He criminally invaded another country illegally, and he clearly admitted to murdering someone who was defending their own country from that invasion. He's a criminal. This guy is a criminal. He's an unrepentant criminal. He clearly does not think that what he did was wrong at all. At least whenever this was made, he clearly doesn't think it was wrong. Now, I don't actually know when this clip is from. It's clearly real, but unfortunately the person who's showing it here does not actually have where she's playing this on the screen. The video on the screen is a different video, so I would assume this is probably like a year old or something. And other stuff that this guy has said is very much similar to that sort of thing. Probably the worst thing that I've seen from him is that he said that Hasan literally engaged in terrorism. You know, this is just one of his great little videos talking like the most generic right-wing American anti-communist dumbass you could ever imagine. I found it particularly bad that he was on Noah's stream a day or two after Rashid Al-Haddad was on, because there is actually a comment from Westside Tyler where he openly called for Rashid's death. He said that he was a terrorist and he was going to like celebrate and laugh when he died. Someone said, "I love how Hasan interviewing some random Yemeni kid made you people so mad." And Tyler responded saying, "I am just stoked to see how Hasan will try to spin it as a war crime when that kid gets his head unzipped by some merc with a sniper rifle while trying to approach a cruise ship. LMAO, mad LMAO." Here is Westside Tyler saying that the Palestine movement is like a cancer. This is literally 6 months ago, by the way, in November 2024. He seems to think that like the pro-Palestine movement is the worst thing in the entire world and the cause of all the evil in the world, because I guess he wanted people to vote for Kamala Harris, and he was really angry that they weren't doing that because, you know, Kamala Harris was massacring children every day.
And into an absolute loss. Pro-Palestine protesters on the left side of things are the biggest cancer in our entire movement. They're fucking insane. They are destructive. A lot of them are actually actively anti-Semitic. There's insane amounts of pro-terrorist rhetoric, especially from Hasan and his camp, which isn't a non-existent chunk of the electorate. Hasan has multiple millions upon millions of views as an influencer to his own circuit of people. But in addition to that, Hasan has literally been put up as a poster boy of anti-Semitic, pro-terrorist, anti-American thought as a leftist, and indicative of what you get if you support progressives and allow them either into the Democratic side of the aisle or allow them into American politics at all. And he is also, by default, of trying to say that, you know, I don't know, he fucking donated $250,000, $10 million, $2 billion to the Amazon Workers Fund, whatever I don't care about your indulgences, okay? I know
I really think that clip really spoke for itself, right? Like, this guy has a really long history of like saying Second Thought is a terrorist sympathizer. This guy basically thinks that anyone opposed to US imperialism is a terrorist. What else can you say? I guess this is how he justifies his massacre of people who were just defending their own country from him. Hasan bringing sexy back to terrorism. He has awesome little thumbnail here where he compares the Houthis to ISIS and says that it's wrong to characterize them as like doing a blockade for good. Yeah, I mean, all in all, not the greatest stuff ever. And some of this stuff, like, it's just, I don't even know what audience he's going for. Like, he makes videos about how Lonabox is a shithead, and then, like, he also makes videos about how anyone who supports, like, any pro-Palestinian, like, violent action is a terrorist, and how anyone who protests for Palestine is also, like, a terrorist and an anti-Semite. I don't even know, like, who this is for. I don't know what audience he's going for. I think he sort of relies on a lot of the people who find him not actually knowing about the totality of the stuff that he said, and they're just being no clear consistency in anything that he said at all. So I guess, like, is it possible that this guy has like totally changed in the last 6 months from when he was saying that pro-Palestinian protesters are a cancer and pro-Palestinian people are all terrorists? I mean, maybe, I guess. He clearly hasn't clarified that. He certainly doesn't seem to think he did anything wrong in voluntarily joining the military to get a paycheck to massacre people defending their own country from an imperialist invading army that had, for the previous 15 years, been starving their children to death, though. Having your views just so radically change in 6 months is a huge fucking thing as well. But yeah, I mean, be aware of what you're watching. This guy, if he is even remotely the same guy who was like laughing at his murder of a guy defending his own country from a US imperialist invasion, or the guy who was calling pro-Palestine protesters terrorists and anti-Semites. He does not deserve a single tiny little second of your attention. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say. In particular, because this guy literally wished fucking death on Rashid a year ago, and now he's like invited to our charity streams. I think there was a huge fucking mistake there, like a big miscommunication, a lack of vetting that went on to allow that to happen. Literally a day after Rashid, who has been slandered by people like this as a terrorist who deserves death for so long, was on the stream himself.